laureates, Your Excellencies, Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here to the Swedish Parliament, Riksdagen. Nearly 100 years ago, after the nation fought in the First World War, so enormously described as a war to end all wars, the peace and security that we all desire remains elusive for much of humanity. It is clear that true peace and security requires the development of alternative, non-violent forms of resistance, and for us to recognize the fact that the global trade in arms fuels violence and misery. Peace and security today encompass a respect for and the protection of human rights, women's rights, and our environment. The Right Livelihood Awards recognize those individuals who and organizations that have walked the talk and achieved outstanding success in their tireless efforts to shape the peaceful world which we all so fervently desire. We are here today to honor Mr. Hayat Kadachi, Dr. Sima Samar, Dr. Jean Sharp, and the organization Campaign Against Arms Trades, who have been awarded the 33rd Right Livelihood Awards. Together, with 4 different yet complementary approaches, you have fought your exceptional works defined an essential condition for global peace and security. Dear laureates, you will shortly receive your awards. As second Deputy Speaker of the Swedish Parliament, Riksdagen, it is an honor to open this special ceremony. On behalf of the Swedish Parliament, Riksdagen, I would like to welcome you warmly here today. Allow me to express my gratitude for your presence and to wish you every continued success with your important work. As a Member of Parliament and Deputy Speaker, I would like to emphasize the importance of Parliament-to-Parliament cooperation in order to nourish vibrant democratic systems. Additionally, we must not forget the significant role NGOs play to enhance democracy in each country. We ought to remember the solution to a better future cannot be achieved using one single recipe. The solution will differ from place to place, from field to field, and from time to time. However, the final goal, global peace and security, must be the same for all of us. Today we are reminded on how important initiative, integrity, and courage are, and of what we can achieve through persistent work for a cause you strongly believe in. Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Eva-Lena Jansson, Chairperson of the Swedish Society for Right Livelihood Award in the Swedish Parliament. Welcome.
Mr. Speaker, laureates, colleagues and friends, my name is Eva-Lena Jansson. I'm a member of the Parliament representing the Social Democratic Party. I'm also the chair of Society of the Right Livelihood Award in the Swedish Parliament, Särla. And I'm so pleased to see you all tonight in this happy occasion where we get to honor people who work for a more just, equal and truly sustainable planet. I hope you all will learn some new things and enjoy the speeches and the music this evening. In order for all of us to fully experience everything tonight, we ask you to kindly turn off your mobile phone and not take any photographs with flash during the actual ceremony. During the intermission, the laureates will stay up here for you to be able to take a really good picture later. So we all ask you photographers not to move close to the stage, since they will disturb both our guests and filming from TV and web. And now it's an honor for me. I give the floor to Jakob von Yxkull from the Right Livelihood Award. Welcome, Jakob.
Honourable Speaker, Members of Parliament, Dear award recipients, excellencies, friends. This year, the family of Right Livelihood Award recipients has grown to 149 laureates from 62 different countries. Some of them face threats even as we celebrate today. We at the Right Livelihood Award Foundation are doing our best to work actively for their protection, to visit and mobilize support for award recipients under threat. Among our laureates, some have accompanied us for many years. They've allowed us to become a part of their lives, to share their struggles and successes, as we've had the joy of seeing them at our anniversary meetings every 5 years. One of them was Rosalie Bertell, a scientist and a nun, and an acclaimed international expert and activist on the dangers of low-level radiation. Rosalie was a lighthouse, never shying away from conflicts with powerful interests in her public health advocacy. She left us this year at the age of 83. Please join me in a minute of silence and gratitude for the life and work of Rosalie Bertell. Thank you very much. In his 2007 book, The Seventh Decade, The New Shape of Nuclear Danger, Jonathan Schell writes on the linkages between nuclear weapons and global warming. The two perils have a great deal in common. Both are the fruit of swollen human power. In one case, the destructive power of war. In the other, the productive power of fossil fuel energy. Both put stakes on the table of a magnitude never present before in human decision-making. Both threaten life on a planetary scale. Both require a fully global response. Anyone concerned by the one should be concerned with the other. It would be a shame to save the Earth from slowly warming, only to burn it up in an instant in a nuclear war. The interlinked crises now endangering our shared future are accelerating. They now threaten all our achievements, all our plans and hopes. Trillions of dollars of costs externalized at the expense of nature and of future generations now have to be accounted for. But much of today's assets and wealth will disappear once these costs are internalized. As our award recipient, Professor Herman Daly, has warned, economic growth is fast becoming uneconomic growth, increasingly spent on damage, repair, and prevention. In a world of growing scarcities, violent conflicts will multiply, as will economic and environmental refugees. As always, the impact will be the hardest on the most vulnerable people and countries, yet this time nobody will remain unaffected. We're often told that we cannot change our world or human nature, yet both are changed all the time. New norms, technologies, brands, and lifestyles spread across continents. Public attitudes shift. Culture adapts and evolves continually, as does human consciousness. We're also told that the reforms required to safeguard our shared future are too costly. This is also wrong. For whatever a society can do, it can also finance. Only political and public will is needed. New money can be created without causing inflation if it is used to fund new production of new goods and services and to reduce the unaffordable human waste of unemployment. The current global disorder, with its rules and regulations, its training and qualification systems, its foreign security, development, transport, economic and innovation policies, is based on premises that are rapidly disappearing. We now need to reconnect with our Earth and our shared future. I met many in business concerned about the state of our air, oceans, forests, about biodiversity destruction, climate chaos, and the planetary devastation we are leaving to our children and future generations. Rarely, though, have I encountered one deciding to dedicate his life to the protection of the natural environment and to become an activist working to preserve and regenerate the soils and forests of his country. Hayrettin Karaca has been called the grandfather of the Turkish environmental movement. He has dedicated his time, money and energy to preserve his country's endangered species. Through TEMA, the Turkish Foundation for Combating Soil Erosion, for Reforestation and the Protection of Natural Habitats, which he co-founded, he has successfully educated millions about environmental realities while working to stop the destruction of grazing land, deforestation, over-fertilization, mass use of pesticides, plant extinction, and soil erosion. Over the years, TEMA has carried out some 150 model projects in sustainable rural development and land management, reforestation and biodiversity conservation across the country. It has implemented projects that create environmentally sustainable and regenerating income opportunities for the local population, assist the improvement of livestock breeding, the introduction of good agricultural practices, fruit cultivation, horticulture, and trainings for farmers on soil and technical issues. In the 1990s, TEMA was largely responsible for Turkey's ratification of the UN Convention on Desertification and for the passage of the Pastures Act in the Turkish Parliament. In its legal work, TEMA is also prepared to take the government to court, and Karaca himself has on many occasions spoken out against polluters and the extractive industries. After supporting a local movement against gold mining, he was charged with illegal trespassing and faced trial with the prospect of 6 years imprisonment. We are glad and relieved to note that the gold mining company responsible for making the accusation withdrew their frivolous complaint against Karaca at a court hearing on November 20th. The jury honors Hayrettin Karaca for a lifetime of tireless advocacy and support for the protection and stewardship of our natural world, combining successful entrepreneurship with effective environmental activism. It is with very great pleasure that I present the 2012 Right Livelihood Honorary Award to Hayrettin Karaca. As Mr. Karaca regrettably could not make it here as he had hoped due to the adverse weather conditions, his grandson Kerem Brera and his colleague Mrs. Denise Atash, Vice Chair of TEMA, will accept the award on his behalf. To many people in Europe and the Western world, Afghanistan is a lost state, a country beleaguered by terror, drug traffickers and corruption, from which only bad news reached the rest of the world. Therefore, it is even more imperative to highlight the beacons of hope persevering there, strong, courageous women who work to shape the future of this nation and to bring about security, health, education, and as an essential prerequisite for peace, justice. Seema Samar, a doctor by training, established the Shuhada organization in 1989. Today, Shuhada operates more than 100 schools and 15 clinics and hospitals dedicated to providing education and health care, particularly to women and girls. Its health programs have benefited over 3.3 million people, its education programs 176,000, and its vocational training 6,000. 220,000 people have received human rights trainings from this organization. Seema Samar served in the interim administration of Afghanistan and established the first ever Ministry of Women's Affairs. Under her leadership, the ministry began advocacy and training programs to improve women's economic, political, legal, and social status. The ministry won the right of female government employees to return to their jobs and to keep their seniority after maternity leave. It secured the representation of women as 11% of the Loya Jirga delegates and oversaw the re-entry of girls to schools. Since 2004, Seema Samar has chaired the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, which aims to strengthen the rule of law and end impunity. For Seema Samar, accountability for human rights violations is an essential condition for peace. Even though her resolve in this field has put her life at great risk, she continues her work for justice. The Right Livelihood Awards jury recognize Seema Samar for her long-standing and courageous dedication to human rights, especially the rights of women, in one of the most complex and dangerous regions of the world. It is with very great pleasure that I present the 2012 Right Livelihood Award to Dr. Seema Samar. When it comes to military operations, the strategic genius of a general or military command has been hailed for millennia, even when the accomplishments of that genius wreaked genocide. The strategic uses of nonviolent action and people power, on the other hand, would have remained unsung, and their power to bring about profound political change underestimated if it had not been for one man, Dr. Gene Sharp. Gene Sharp has pioneered the academic research on nonviolent resistance and is its foremost international expert. His writings have guided liberation, democracy, and social movements around the globe, from the jungles of Burma to the streets of Serbia and Tahrir Square in Cairo. His book, Civilian-Based Defense, was used by the Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian governments during their separation from the Soviet Union in 1991. The then Lithuanian Defense Minister, Audrius Butkevičius, declared at the time, "I would rather have this book than the nuclear bomb." Over the years, social movements including Serbia's Otpor, Georgia's Khmara, Kyrgyzstan's Kelkel, and Belarus' Subr have used Gene Sharp's writings in their struggles to effect change. His book, From Dictatorship to Democracy, has been translated into more than 34 languages and turned into one of the most influential publications used by democracy activists across the world. In recent years, his writings have been used by the Iranian Green Uprising of 2009 and in several Arab countries. The jury celebrates Dr. Gene Sharp for developing and articulating the core principles and strategies of nonviolent resistance and supporting their practical implementation in conflict areas around the world. It is with very great pleasure that I present the 2012 Right Livelihood Award to Dr. Jean Shah. He will accept the award together with Jamila Rakib, Executive Director of the Albert Einstein Institution, which he founded in 1983. When a government pays lip service to human rights but simultaneously promotes weapon sales to countries in conflict or where human rights abuses are ongoing, its hypocrisy makes it an accomplice in these crimes. There are many countries guilty of this hypocrisy. European countries, including Sweden, are among them. And it is the duty of all of us to work to stop this deadly trade, just like the activists of the British organization Campaign Against Arms Trade, CAT, do. CAT works to end the influence of the arms trade lobby over governments, aiming to stop the procurement or export of arms, where they might exacerbate conflict, support aggression, or increase tension, where they might support an oppressive regime or undermine democracy, and where they might threaten social welfare through the level of military spending. In addition, CAT seeks to end all government, political and financial support and subsidies for arms exports. Thanks to their relentless advocacy, UK export subsidies to arms companies have fallen significantly from 57% to only 1% of total subsidies. In 2007, CAT pressured the multinational company that owned Britain's biggest arms fair to pull out of hosting it. In addition, it made academic institutions in the Church of England redefine their investment criteria and disinvest from arms exporters. Recently, it successfully protested against a sponsorship agreement between a weapons manufacturer and the National Gallery in London. The following report illustrates the perversity as well as the absurdity of this trade. I quote, "Foreign countries owe the UK hundreds of millions of pounds that was originally borrowed by repressive regimes to pay for British-made arms, government data have now revealed. Information obtained by the UK Export Finance, the government department that manages foreign debt, shows Britain lent nearly £1 billion to countries including Indonesia, Egypt and Iraq to pay for weapons, some of which are alleged to have been used against civilians." Quote from the Financial Times last month. The jury recognizes Campaign Against the Arms Trade for their innovative and effective campaigning against the global trade in arms. And it is with very great pleasure that I present the 2012 Right Livelihood Award to the Campaign Against Arms Trade, represented today by Anne-Marie O'Reilly and Henry McLaughlin. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have caught more than just glimpses of hope. We've caught hope for Afghanistan, for societies in conflict that have learned to resist oppression and effect change without recourse to violence. Hope for the soil and forests that sustain our lives. Hope and inspiration that we can overcome the unholy nexus between governments and the arms industry and together create a safer world for all. This year's 4 laureates, Hadatin Karasa, Sima Samar, Jean Sharp, and the Campaign Against Arms Trade, join the family of award recipients who, through their courage, work, vision, and commitment, have filled and continue to fill the meaning of this prize, right livelihood with life. I'm very happy that today former award recipients Tapio Matlar of the Finnish Village Action Network, Katarina Kroonja from Croatia, Ann Lidén and Lena Agh from the Swedish organization Kvinna till Kvinna, Ina May and Stephen Gaskin from the USA, and Ponna Vignarajah, representing the Participatory Institute for Development Alternatives in Sri Lanka, have joined us for the celebration to welcome the 2012 Right Livelihood Award recipients in our midst. I would like to thank those behind the Right Livelihood Award for their contribution to this award and to the prize ceremony, especially the Swedish Parliament and SARLA, the Association for the Right Livelihood Award in the Parliament. My colleagues on the board and jury of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation, our partner organizations, the artists and all the staff who make this evening possible, as well as everyone who proposed a candidate for this year's award. My special gratitude goes to our partners, circle of friends and other supporters who make this award possible through their donations. When I founded this award, I was convinced that as long as people felt it was needed, they would also support it. Now this award is 33 years old, still funded almost exclusively by private donations. I would like to conclude with these words from Rosalie Bertell's acceptance speech, which she gave here in this hall 26 years ago. Domestic or common security is still the sine qua non of human survival and development. It can never be sacrificed for adventure, profit, or political gain. The people of the global village are longing to share in the benefits of human endeavor, not in the garbage, to share in the wholesomeness of life and not be handed death. It is my heartfelt wish that the good begun here will flow forth as a river of life justice. Thank you very much.
till Romme i rök och damm dala. Bäväringen här rycker fram.
Hurra, komma till gåsar, så glada för Romme i rök och damm. Modet i bröstet i blåsar, så glada bäväringen rycker fram.
Nu allt ur det glada gossar. Och gäller det fienden så veta vi rå.
Ladda och skjuta och rask gå på.
Översten känner gott sarna bäver. Ringen mig sticker sitt befäl.
Hurra för översten, hurra, man känner det gossa i Dalarna väl. Friskt och det kulorna surra, befäringen seger i sitt befäl. Vi unga, slåta sjunga.
Och gäller det fienden så veta vi rå.
Ladda och skjuta och rask gå på.
Flickor spring ej fast vid ladda och skjuta, ladda och skjuta,
Ladda och skjuta och rask gå på. May the rose
Deputy Speaker, dear laureates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bodil Ceballos. I'm a member of the Swedish Parliament for the Green Party. I'm also a member of the newly started Committee on Arms Trade, a parliamentary committee here in the Swedish Parliament. The aim or the purpose of the committee is to restrict arms trade to non-democratic states. We live in a world with an increasing arms trade, both legal and illegal. And where every crown we spent on development cooperation is doubled by about 15 in arms export. So that's why it's a very great pleasure for me, and I'm very proud to present and to welcome here the campaign against arms trade, represented by Anne-Marie O'Reilly this time. And so I will listen to you very carefully, and I will get inspired, I hope, for our work in the committee. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, honourable members of Parliament, fellow laureates, dear friends. It is a great honour to accept the Right Livelihood Award on behalf of Campaign Against Arms Trade. The award is a valued tribute to the work of thousands of people in the UK, whose collective action has managed to expose, challenge, and impede the arms trade since we began our work nearly 40 years ago. The trail of destruction wrought by weapons produced in the UK extends beyond the wars waged in Afghanistan and Iraq. It reaches from Gaza to Sri Lanka, from Egypt to East Timor. The UK spent 4 years promoting weapons to Gaddafi's regime in Libya. Then, in 2011, it bombed the tanks that just weeks before it had been preparing to upgrade. In the same year, it continued to promote and sell weapons to Egypt, even though 846 people were killed in the brutal suppression of protests. In Bahrain, the government's crackdown on activists continues to this day, but the UK still bolsters the regime with weapons sales and the message of support that such sales send. British weapons were used to kill civilians when Israel attacked Gaza in 2008. Yet the UK government has continued to arm the country ever since. In recent weeks, we have yet again counted the cost of those sales in human lives. Then we look to the UK's biggest weapons customer, Saudi Arabia. One of the most repressive regimes in the world, in 2011, Saudi Arabia deployed armoured vehicles made in the UK to help suppress the democratic uprising in Bahrain. Yet just last month, Prime Minister David Cameron visited the regime in person to try to secure still more weapons sales. That visit shows us that our governments are not just allowing the sales, but actively promoting them. How do they justify pouring public resources into promoting arms sales to repressive regimes? We're told that our arms controls are the strictest in the world, that all we need is an international treaty to bring everyone else up to our standard. But our standard is nothing to aspire to. It is to sell to almost anyone who will buy, be they dictator, human rights abuser, or NATO warmonger. On paper, EU arms controls aren't that bad. They say that we won't sell weapons if there's a clear risk they'll be used for internal repression or external aggression. If these rules were actually followed, we probably wouldn't have much of an arms trade. But the rules aren't followed. The fact is that no arms controls or treaty will work while our governments are actively promoting weapons sales around the world. The UK government has an office of 150 people dedicated to selling arms, far more than the staff they employ for any other industry. We're told that the arms industry is essential for jobs in the economy. In the UK, the government uses grossly inflated and out-of-date jobs figures. It knows this is the only way it could rally public support. Yet how many other export sectors receive a £700 million subsidy from the taxpayer, worth over £9,000 per job? We know that far more jobs could be created in the vibrant green energy sector if public funds were redirected. We're told that we need to export arms for our national security. Yet the UK sold weapons to Argentina weeks before the Falklands War. It sold arms to Saddam Hussein months before the first Gulf War. It actively courted Gaddafi weeks before going to war with him last year. Ordinary people know this is wrong. Only 6% in the UK thought it was right to arm Gaddafi. You can either promote weapons or you can promote human rights. You can't do both. Unlike the arms trade, we do not have huge resources. Campaign Against Arms Trade has just a few staff. What we do have is the energy and commitment of thousands of people who know the arms trade is wrong, are prepared to take action to stop it, and who fund much of our work with their donations. It can feel like we are facing Goliath. So how do we make a difference? By creative campaigning. In October, we won our campaign to end our National Gallery support for the arms trade. For 6 years, it had regularly hosted arms dealers and their clients in one of the most prestigious venues in the UK. With artists and activists, we took back the gallery space to create our own artworks. Playful interventions in the spirit of public art engaged support from the art world and persuaded the gallery to end its ties with the deadly arms business. How do we make a difference? By uncovering and communicating information. Information is power, and the arms trade don't want us to have it. So we monitor trade press, obtain government documents through the Freedom of Information Act, and analyse export data to bring this secretive industry into the light. We are pioneering new data applications which enable dense government and industry data to be searched in an intuitive way. We are making information about what is being sold and to whom open to public scrutiny. Together with media work, online actions, social media messaging, and political lobbying, we have shaped public debate to challenge UK weapons exports in the wake of the Arab Spring. We have named and shamed the companies which are arming Bahrain and those which touted weapons to Gaddafi in 2010. How do we make a difference? By working with others across the world. In 1999, massive bribes were paid to ensure that South Africa bought Swedish and British planes at more than twice the price of their competitors. Campaign Against Arms Trade worked with South African campaigners and Svenska Freds to expose what was going on and highlight the devastating impact this deal had on public spending and democracy in South Africa. With others in the European Network Against the Arms Trade, we make sure that the annual general meetings of key arms companies are dominated by questions of corruption and ethics. We gain inspiration from each other's stories of action, from the Swedish campaigners who shut down an arms factory for a day, and from the German campaign to stop the secretive deal of 200 tanks to Saudi Arabia. How do we make a difference? By engaging public support to challenge arms fairs. By harnessing the instinctive, widespread disgust with arms fairs where weapons are touted to whoever will buy, we succeeded in getting Reed Elsevier, the owner of one of the world's largest arms fairs, to sell up. The campaign garnered support from many different quarters and used diverse tactics. Since Reed also owns the London Book Fair, published authors spoke out. Since it owns a medical journal, the editorial board called for an end to the company's profits from the arms trade, and 2,000 academics signed a petition in their support. Activists began a weekly picket at their offices and targeted their annual general meeting, while campaign allies sold their shareholdings in the company. Together, we built a tidal wave of support to show that the arms industry is not a legitimate business, That meant Reed could no longer afford to stay involved. How do we make a difference? By using legal challenges. On several occasions, we have taken on the government and arms companies in the courts, including challenging the government's decision to stop corruption investigations into BAE Systems deals with Saudi Arabia. As a result, the name of BAE Systems has become indelibly associated with corruption. Its fear of legal action means it now avoids one of the key taxpayer subsidies it used to enjoy: government insurance to underwrite its deals. For us, a small organisation taking on the massive arms trade, receiving the Right Livelihood Award is a great privilege. Arms companies do all they can to ensure that their interests hold sway in the media and with politicians. This award helps us to amplify what ordinary people want instead. It gives international recognition to the persistent work of determined campaigners. It gives profile to the way the arms trade perpetuates conflict and human rights abuses. It gives us an opportunity to share what has worked and our aims for the future. Next year, the world's arms industry plans to descend on London for a huge arms fair, which will bring together tyrants, human rights abusers, countries from both sides of conflicts, and companies pushing the latest killing technology. We will bring all our resources to bear on exposing and resisting it so that it can no longer take place. Just as we have transformed UK arms export data to put its information in the hands of the public, we plan to do the same for other data sets, including EU arms exports. By exposing what is going on, we can enable people to challenge the arms trade more effectively. At a time of massive cuts to public services, it is vital that the huge financial support taxpayers give to the arms trade is questioned. With the award money, we will invest in campaigning to highlight the positive impact a move away from funding arms could have. Putting public money to work on tackling climate change would be a much-needed boost for the economy. We would be contributing towards people's security rather than threatening it with further arms proliferation. The arms trade is an evil of our time. It fuels death, destruction, and human rights abuses. But it is not a fact of nature. It exists because of the decisions governments make, and they can decide differently. We can choose to restrain weapons sales, not promote their proliferation. We can choose to put human rights before arms company profits. We can choose to promote industries that support life, not those that are based on death. In the words of Eamon McCann, who stood trial for the part he played in shutting down his local arms company, we believe that one day the world will look back on the arms trade as we look back today on the slave trade and wonder how it came about that such evil could abound in respectable society.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, dear award recipients, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anita Brodén. I'm a member of the Swedish Parliament and represent the Liberal Party. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Gene Sharp, born in Ohio in the United States of America. Dr. Sharp has for a very long time worked for non-violent solution and democracy. He was jailed for 9 months protesting conscription in the Korean War 1953. He witnessed China's Tiananmen Square uprising in 1989 and snuck into a rebel camp in Burma in the 1990s. Dr. Gene Sharp is very well known also as an author of a handbook for non-violence actions. From dictatorship to democracy, this handbook is now translated into 34 languages. The Wall Street Journal describes this man as having had a broad influence on international events over the past 2 decades, helping to advance a global democratic awakening. I want to welcome the academic writer and Machiavelli of nonviolent resistance, Dr. Gene Sharp. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Distinguished sir, without whom all of this and much more would not have been possible. Mr. Deputy Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, fellow laureates, and friends, sometimes old friends I haven't seen for a long time, because this is not my first visit to Sweden. I wish to begin by thanking the Right Livelihood Award Foundation for the great honor of this award. I wish also to thank Michael True for the nomination for the award. But I think this award might be less a recognition of what I have tried to do for a very long time, but a recognition of what has been happening in the world in these past very few years. The subject matter of nonviolent struggle, which was always mispresented, misunderstood, and largely ignored, even in especially in our history books. That has now changed. And with the award of the Arab Spring in Tunisia and in Egypt and on beyond, there is now a great hunger for knowledge about this phenomenon. And this is new. But that hunger is without all the old misconceptions as to what it was. Violence in our world is so common and mostly, get rid of this damn cane, is mostly accepted. Violence in our world, military means mostly accepted without question. At times it seems to be a permanent part of reality. And those of us who want the future to be different are often relegated to a role of irrelevant objectors, able only to dissent. And dissent is important, but able to dissent, but unable to actually achieve a change away from the heavy role of violence and political practice. This situation can lead us to accept that reliance on violence is inevitable and beyond our control. That conclusion is a grave error. During the past century and long before, at times people have found another way to fight when they needed to struggle for various objectives. In those limited situations, the use of violence shrank or disappeared, not because it was evil, but because it wasn't needed anymore. The violence had been replaced with nonviolent struggle. Nonviolent struggle or nonviolent action includes 3 categories of methods, specific means of acting. 1, the methods of nonviolent protest that are symbolic activities, such as marching down the street or displaying certain colors. But this technique, if it had only that, wouldn't be worth much. It also includes the much more powerful methods of non-cooperation, such as social boycotts, economic boycotts, labor strikes, political boycotts, civil disobedience, and thirdly, the methods of nonviolent intervention and disruption, such as sit-ins, fasts, and the creation of new institutions. This technique, this is important. This technique is identified by what people do, not by what they believe. And many of the people who have been so brave in nonviolent struggles that have changed the world in many ways have believed in violence, but they found that nonviolent struggle as an expedient way to accomplish something because it would work better. That's turning something on its head. Such actions in nonviolent struggle have been used by various types of opponents, against various types of opponents, including employers, governments, and dictatorships. Rarely an individual takes such action, but almost always is a group, scores of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, and we have seen even millions of people acting together. Throughout the centuries, despite its ignorance in history books, people have waged this kind of struggle with modest effectiveness, not perfect, but modest effectiveness. Because the resistors have had limited knowledge and understanding of this operation of this type of technique. How does it work? They had no guidebooks on how to plan strategy. They didn't even have lists of do's and don'ts. Sometimes this type of conflict was used where it was not expected. For example, in Nazi-occupied Denmark, in Norway, the Netherlands, and elsewhere, and even Berlin to save Jews in 1943, successfully, it should be known, a demonstration by women who were married to Jews, who got their Jewish husbands brought back from camps, even the camps where the extermination gas chambers existed. It was once thought that the peoples of Eastern Europe and Central Europe would be living under communist rule for decades if the West did not launch a military invasion. There was no military invasion, but now the people of Poland, East Germany, the former Czechoslovakia, and other countries are recognized as having freed themselves without a war of liberation. Most remarkable of all are the little nations of Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. These were no softies. These people who had been suffering under oppression for almost many, many years conducted brave guerrilla warfare against both the Nazi occupation and the Soviet Union. Brave, but not successful. Then came a new situation, and they improvised their methods of protest, linking arms, so sending side by side, all the way from Vilnius in the south to Tallinn in the far north in Estonia. And then they used new strategic understanding from my then new book. It wasn't even off the press yet. My new book, Civilian-Based Defense. The governments planned their resistance strategically, exited the Soviet Union with minimal casualties. And if you think it was easy to get out of the Soviet Union or Russia, look at Chechnya. In contrast, these brave people who used not only their hearts and their inspiration, but their heads. In Lithuania, I think there were 14 dead. In Latvia, 8, and in Estonia, none. And they got out with the Soviet Union. In early 2011, the predominantly nonviolent victorious revolutions against long-entrenched autocratic regimes in Tunisia and Egypt launched what became, but they didn't know in advance, the Arab Spring. These struggles were stunning in their mass mobilization, nonviolent discipline, not perfect, but very important, fearlessness and speed. It was once thought that nonviolent means take forever and violence is fast. We know that's not true anymore, along with a lot of the other preconceptions. Now, there's a widespread growing hunger for knowledge about nonviolent struggle, fueling an increased demand for publications and other resources. New books and old books are revealing a technique of great power with insights into its history and understanding of how it operates. The Arab Spring and other developments have let the genie out of the bottle, and it cannot be put back in that bottle of ignorance again. The knowledge of how to cast off oppression nonviolently is now known and is spreading. People are abandoning violent options, not because they're immoral, but because they don't work well. There's something better and more effective they can do. The dramatic interest from the media in our work at the Albert Einstein Institution in the wake of the Arab Spring revealed an amazing new reality. Nonviolent struggle is finally achieving the serious attention and consideration it's long deserved. It should be noted that in those months, from April on, several dozen reporters from various countries who contacted us all had a basic, accurate understanding of the nature of nonviolent struggle. This was 4 to 7 reporters, print press, radio, and television from all over the world, quite literally, who came for 6 to 8 weeks. And not one of those dozens and dozens of reporters had any of the old preconceptions that were simply not true, that had changed. And it's significant that their editors must have anticipated that the public wanted to read about that new phenomenon. They thought it was new. It wasn't. And that climb of struggle. We now know that the type of struggle does not require a gentle opponent. And the British, by the way, in India were not always gentlemen. We know that nonviolent struggle does not require a charismatic leader or a Mahatma. We know that nonviolent struggle for effectiveness requires nonviolent discipline, but we now know people can do that. It requires bravery, but probably no less than military struggle in some ways, the opposite of the usual preconceptions. We thought it required a single person as a strategic genius to tell people what to do. We now know that is not true. We now know that nonviolent struggle can work quickly, as in Tunisia and in Egypt, not solving all problems forever, but a major substitute for violent struggle. We know all those preconceptions are now false. They are not true anymore. So don't give me that same nonsense that I heard 50 years ago. Effective nonviolent struggle is now known to be possible, more possible than much earlier believed, and it can be done. Nevertheless, almost all governments, with rare exceptions, retain their irrational faith in the omnipotence of violence, and therefore drag their peoples into disasters. The new governments working towards independence in Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania are exceptions for this. There it became government policy to use nonviolent resistance, and the Latvians, by the way, have issued a major study about that thick on their role of nonviolent resistance in achieving the restoration of independence for Latvia. But all these sources of power of all governments rest on identifiable sources. You can find out where does it come from, what gives it power. And when you identify those sources, whether it's moral authority and legitimacy, control of the economic system, human wisdom, working for changing the society, to operate even these systems of oppression, that requires help and support. But all those sources of power are dependent upon cooperation and submission and obedience of people and institutions, and that source and support can be removed, as it has been. That was why the Quisling regime failed in Norway, despite the Nazi occupation and the presence of the Gestapo and the German army. That is why brought Quisling to school in Saarbeck after the teachers had destroyed his effort to establish the cooperative state by bringing all the teachers under centralized control. And he went down to Saarbeck and brought the teachers down to the first floor of the school building and stormed and raged at them, as one of the teachers in that struggle told me. And he said, "You teachers have destroyed everything for me." It's not what a great fascist leader usually says. People now know they have a tool, they have a technique that cannot be taken away from them. Some struggles bring down, non-violent struggles bring down an oppressive regime, and then something goes wrong. As when the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia in October 1917, after the nonviolent struggle had brought down the Tsar system completely. And how the Ayatollahs seized power in Iran after the brave nonviolent defiance brought down the Shah. We have warned that is a danger signal. It is a danger time. You've got to be very careful and very cautious. That's why we have done what I think there is nothing else like it, a guide to how to prevent coup d'etat and executive usurpations and how to defeat them if they occur. It's called the anti-coup. And it's on our website, aeinstein.org, and it's coming out in new languages soon. It's already in some other languages. It's important that the achievements of this type of technique of people power be accurately recorded. Already in Norway, the heroism of the people, of the teachers and the clergy and the workers is being trivialized as well, not too important. It was supposedly the boys in the mountains who did it. With all respect to their courage and their sufferings, it was the people of the society who did it in their institutions. And that needs to be remembered, because we can learn much from that. It's necessary to learn how to block foreign military interventions in nonviolent struggles, whatever the real motive, that can derail the collapse of the oppressing regime and help it to maintain its rule. Foreign military assistance can also give the foreign military forces major control of the ongoing struggle and, if successful, the future society. So instead of accepting military intervention, nonviolent struggle movement needs to intensify its self-reliant efforts to paralyze or disintegrate the oppressing regime. Now, much has been learned about the nature and potential of nonviolent struggle, and there's still a lot to be learned. Many dangers remain. Major efforts are required to spread the knowledge of how to defeat those dangers and how to increase the effectiveness of nonviolent struggles. A future of domination, the rule of violence, and popular helplessness. I once lived in a not very fancy area of Brooklyn in New York, and then you get in conversation with people there. It always ended So what you going to do? And it's not only the people of Brooklyn in that section who had that experience, that their efforts had never succeeded. But now people around the world are not thinking, so what you going to do? No, what are we going to do? It's a different attitude. Because they're learning how to do it and how to achieve. And we hope we have played a small role in that, if we want to do it in the future. We're now at a new stage in the practice of nonviolent struggle and the recognition of its potential. If we take wise, responsible steps in the coming years, the future will reveal achievements beyond all that we now can even imagine.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Livelihood. I'm very thankful that I can be here and to contribute with some music with a hang. And I would like to dedicate this piece as an improvisation, instant composition with hang. And I want to dedicate this music, this sound, for all the people here, for the livelihood, and all the people who are living and working for the inner peace and the peace in the world. Thank you.
Honorable laureates, Your Excellencies, Deputy Speaker of the Swedish Parliament, ambassadors, members of Parliament, esteemed colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a great honor for me to be here tonight. My name is Abira Sahlani, member of the Swedish Parliament, representing the Centre Party and also member of the Committee for the Right Livelihood Award. The Hindu newspaper in India recently profiled her remarkable life journey from a refugee to healer. As a doctor, an educator, a minister, and a human rights advocate, she has constantly stood up to promote the rights of women, children, and the most marginalized in her country. The influential Foreign Policy magazine listed her in their 2012 list of top 100 global thinkers for having rung the alarm bell about the dismal state of women participation in the modern-day Afghanistan. I want now, and I have the great honor, to welcome a beacon of hope and a beacon of courage for women and all those who aspire for peace, justice, and equality in Afghanistan. Dr. Seema Samar, the floor is yours.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Honorable Member of the Parliament, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, fellow laureates, dear friends, good evening to all of you. Without any doubt, I feel extremely honored and privileged to receive this year's Right Livelihood Award and find myself among a multitude of dedicated and inspiring people who have been struggling for human beings to enjoy a peaceful and decent life. This prestigious recognition is not solely for me and my work, but for my people and my country, and particularly for Afghan women who have been striving for a decent and dignified life. It is for sure not an easy task to fight for women's rights and human rights in a country where women still are considered to be second-class citizens, although we have equal rights in the Constitution. It is indeed very motivating for me and my fellow women's rights advocate working toward the creation of an environment free of violence and discrimination. An obvious peculiarity of our globalized world is indifference to injustice, discrimination, and oppressive behavior of dictators, which in any part of our common earth cannot be tolerated. In the same manner, the dedication of human rights defenders and promoters of democracy and rule of law, whose work is often fraught with great risk, should not remain unnoticed. This award is an affirmation of our struggle. As an Afghan woman defending the basic human rights of my countrywomen and countrymen in a land where human rights was once a taboo, has never been a smooth path. Though we are still a long way away from having our desire for human rights fulfilled, we have come a long way to reach this level. Risk, threats, intimidation, discrimination on one hand, and despairing reaction from a male-dominated society and prevailing conservative attitude on the other, has been a structural challenge my fellow human rights companion and I continue to face. However, now human rights have been turned into a national debate and discourse in the country. Now one is openly talking about torture, which though not abolished, it is not visible and common as it was before. Now no one is burying cases of killing in rape, along with the victims, and hiding them in the grave. Earlier, no one could even dare to talk about such issues. In a country like Afghanistan, where there is low rate of literacy and surge of poverty and years of marginalization, people and victims' families are today talking about the violence and abuses that they were subject to and are airing their voices for justice. This is indeed a pleasant outcome of our effort and advocacy. As a matter of fact, what has kept me motivated is both the continued suffering of my people and my strong belief in what I am engaged with and striving for. For me, the best moment is to see a young girl and a boy who lost her family and have no one to look after them, whether during the former Soviet Union occupation or Civil War periods. But now they are graduates of universities and have a steady job and income. I had too many such kids and still have at the shelters that I support. It is fascinating to see them coming to me and saying, "Mother, I have a job and I want to follow your path and upholding human rights and continuing my journey working towards well-being and peaceful life for my war-hit people." It is for sure very difficult to compensate the opportunity lost in post-conflict, in conflict situations like my country, but it is promising to have somebody to continue walking the talk. For the Afghan woman who has never saw a medical doctor in her entire life, happens to have a missed abortion, she would have been dead if she would not have reached me. She did survive after 2 days of journey, arriving at the hospital that I have built. This is a tiny support that I could have afford to her. After 20 years, she is always striving to see me when I went back to their area. She came to see me and brought me some sweets and said that I had saved her life. Hundreds of such cases give me the satisfaction that I have at least done a positive work for my country. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, this prestigious recognition would indeed further boost the morale of Afghan women and men, and particularly rouse the spirit of human rights defenders in the country. It enhanced their effort and commitment to work for rule of law, democracy, and human rights. This is for my people and my country. This award is a clear indication that we all have a shared vision for a world to be free of injustice, discrimination, and the people suffering. No one should tolerate injustice, and we should all treat injustice anywhere as injustice everywhere. This is to prevent further loss of opportunity and for the young generation to enjoy a lasting peace, sustainable development, and human security in its broadest sense. We have no time for further enmities in witnessing people suffering, and we must make our voices louder and louder for scared and noble causes toward a sustainable future for all humankind. We must act today as our common future depends, as great Gandhi said, on what we do today. At the end, I would like to quote from a poem of an Afghan poet saying, "Our life is too short for our friendship. How come people can spare time for animosity?" Thank you for your attention and your solidarity.
Hello. We are all very honored to be here tonight. Our first song that we're going to play is about trafficking. Long, lonely road. And I was born on the border of the tundra, under star-sprinkled sky. All my life I did wonder about the wide world outside. And then one day, like saga, along came my savior. So handsome and he asked my father for my hand and promised adventure. Said he'd bring me along to the land of roses and hope. Long, lonely road, cross the bridges along the highways. Long, lonely road, over ridges, through the valleys, on the new shore. He kept my passport for safety, told me I was illegal. I begged him no, but he made me do things that I haven't known. But I'm sure that they're only on long, lonely road, cross the bridges along the highways. Long, lonely road, over ridges, through the valleys. All the strangers, all the men, all the different faces, they all look the same. I shut my mind off, close my eyes, go to warm, unsafe places. I wish that I could go home. I wish I could take the long, winding roads, cross the bridges along the highways. Long, winding roads, over ridges, through the valleys. They lock the windows through a tiny hole in the ceiling. I still see stars spreading in the sky, and I close my eyes and fly. Long, lonely road, cross the bridges along the highways. Long, lonely road, over ridges, through the valleys. Long, lonely road, cross the bridges along the highways. Long, lonely road, over ridges, through the valleys.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
Live, all you made.
trust the hearts of men. They will crush you like a sparrow, leaving you to never mend. And they will vow to always love you, swear no love but yours will do. Then they'll leave you for another, break your little heart in two. Little sparrow, precious fragile little thing. Little sparrow, flies so high and feels no pain. If I were a little sparrow, or these mountains I would fly, and I would find him, look into his lying eyes, and I would fly all around him on my little sparrow wings, and I would ask him why he let me love in vain. But I am not a little sparrow, no, I am just a broken dream of a cold, false-hearted lover and his evil cutting shears. Little sparrow, precious fragile little thing. Little sparrow, flies so high and feels no pain. Little sparrow, the sorrow never ends.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Members of Parliament, Excellencies, award recipients, founders and guests. My name is Pyry Niemi. I'm a Member of Parliament and the Committee on Environment and Agriculture representing the Social Democratic Party. There is now a widespread agreement that the responsibility of business of the 21st century has to go well beyond maximizing profits for their shareholders. These individuals' successful efforts to promote soil and forest conservation in Turkey over the last half-century exemplify the profound and positive impact a businessman can have on our environment and common futures. It would be an honor and privilege to welcome the man who is affectionately described as the grandfather of the Turkish environmental movement, Mr. Hayrettin Karaca. But unfortunately, he can't attend today, so on his behalf, I will welcome Deniz Ataç, Vice Chair at TEMA. The floor is yours.
Esteemed Mr. Deputy Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, Mr. von Öksül, fellow laureates of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation, dear guests and friends. I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. I'm very touched. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to speak here today in front of you. To be honored with a prize so valuable for someone my age is probably a situation that we don't see very often. Therefore, I would like to extend my deepest thanks in particular to the Right Livelihood Award jury for selecting me. In addition, I would like to thank Mrs. Birsel Lemke, a previous laureate of the Right Livelihood Award and a dear friend, and for putting incredible effort and support to make it possible for me to be standing here today. I wish he would. Believe me, you have extended my life by giving me numerous new tasks and responsibilities. I would like to thank my companion, Mr. Nihat Gökyiğit, who co-founded Tema Foundation with me, and over 450,000 volunteers and staff of Tema all around Turkey, who dedicate their time and expertise both voluntarily and professionally. I have no doubt that with this award, they too will determine new targets and chart a new roadmap to protect the most precious asset in life, and this asset is soil. Our marvelous soil, the origin of all living things, life-producing, feeding, happiness-providing soil. We owe you a lot, yet we do all kinds of evil to you that you don't deserve. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm 90 years old, and in my lifetime, I have visited many parts of the world and witnessed all the colors and beauty of different countries. I have also witnessed a lot of pain and misery. I have come to realize what wealth and poverty means in the world. One thing I realized very early is this: the primary injustice in this world comes from our approach towards soil and how we treat it. We see soil as a right given to us. We perceive it as a product, as a resource that we can use inexhaustibly. We almost pay any attention to soil. We neglect it or even scorn it. We throw our garbage onto it. We wash our hands after we touch soil. Soil that gives us life is not dirty. It is us who make it dirty. Our soil is so valuable. It hosts so many small organisms, microorganisms, and numerous beneficial minerals that enable the continuation of life. These magical beings form a harmonious collaboration with other magical beings. And this mysterious concert provides for an apple tree, or an olive grove, or a tomato to grow. At the end, soil gives life to all of us. To live, first let the other living beings prosper. Let's start with protecting the soil. When I was a little boy, I discovered my life for every living being in the soil. This love of soil proceeded with me throughout my life like a red thread. I grew up, became a successful businessman, and almost everyone in Turkey wore my knitwear, whose slogan was "Karaca with you for years." I was a well-known businessman, but in my heart, I have always remained and felt like a child of soil, who has to run towards the cause of nature all the time, because I feel indebted to nature. My wealth should not give me more rights than others. About 40 years ago, I handed over the keys to all my factories to dedicate myself to my best friend, the soil. I wanted to do everything perfectly and solve the problem permanently from its roots. And the name of this problem was erosion. I hit the road, and in those years traveled almost 340,000 kilometers in Anatolia, living in villages and witnessing with my own eyes that the valuable soil of my beautiful country was subject to erosion through wind and water. But unfortunately, more than natural reasons, erosion is mainly caused by human-related activities. I ran into degraded lands, impoverished farmers, unnecessary dams, dried up rivers and springs, and wrong agricultural applications. In year 1992, my friend Nihat Gökyiğit and I founded the Tema Foundation. Today, they call Tema the largest environmental NGO in Turkey. This makes me very happy, but I think that when one looks at the scale of the problem it has to overcome, Tema is still small. It has a long way to go. In the future, the goal must be to have 1 million Tema supporters, which means 1 million defenders of life. Tema has accomplished several achievements up to now. Tema has worked to protect soil and other natural assets. It has advocated for laws protecting the soil to pass in the parliament, has formed scientific committees, planted millions of trees, implemented rural development projects, implemented large-scale education programs, and has led legal struggles against environmental damages. I'm pleased to say Tema has succeeded in the majority of legal cases it has been involved in. Today, Tema is represented in almost every city across the country. Its organization involves all age groups, starting from preschool kids. Tema is recognized and supported by everyone in Turkey today. However, this is not enough. Problems of erosion and soil loss has to reach the consciousness of all people. Erosion is not a simple technical problem. Erosion is not only a problem of my country. Together, we have to fight this threat that recognizes no borders. First of all, each individual has to embrace the soil around them and protect it consciously with sincere hearts, because we all know that once the soil is contaminated, soon it will be lost forever. Soil cannot be cleaned like water or air. And since everyone does have soil in their surrounding, before it is too late, everyone can do something to protect it. Because everything starts with just one person. There is no second without the first. If there is me, there is us. The basis of world peace is healthy soil. If there is no soil, there is hunger. There are wars to protect the soil and peace. First me, then us. Dear Mr. Jakob von Öxül, dear esteemed members of the Right Livelihood Award jury, you found me worthy of this incredible award. In return, I have brought you a very valuable gift, something I have dedicated my whole life to. This is from my arboretum, a piece of Anatolian soil, part of the cradle of many civilizations, including your own. Please take very good care of my precious gift. Tack för att ni lyssnade. Hoşça kalın. Thank you very much.
Well, that was great. I would like to thank you all for tonight. Thanks for the laureates for inspiring speeches, and thanks to all the musicians for great performance. We now welcome all the guests to the buffet across the hallway. Thank you all and have a good night.